All right, we're back, and it's COMP305, week 4, lesson 4, part 2, and this broadcast is for section 1. And again, like I said in the earlier broadcast, again, I'm going to be here every Monday anyway, and we'll be starting promptly at 6:30. But for those people who want to do it remote or want to watch it later, they can certainly do that. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got so far. If I go back. So what we've got is this collider here, right? And I want to get a little bit more feedback, right? Because I don't have a lot of, I can't tell other than the note that says you collided with an island or you cannot collided with a cloud. I don't have feedback. And the best way to get feedback is to add audio, okay? So that and other kinds of explosions and so on, right? But for now, let's add some audio, right? So we can hear the collision. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to add some audio sources. Okay, let's take a look. Let's add one audio source first. We'll go back to Unity, and I'll go to Game. I'll click on Player, and right now, if you notice, there's a bunch of different components. But one thing there's no audio components. So let's add one. So we'll go Add Component, Audio, Audio Source, right? And if you notice, it says this component here, the default is play on awake. I also want this component that I'm going to add in to loop because I want to make it so it's the engine component. Right? So the sound, the plane makes that sound like that, right? So let's go back to audio. And if you notice, I have this engine component here. And I'm going to drag over to my audio clip, right, and make a reference from my engine component to my audio clip, so that my audio source knows what to play. Let's do that. So I'm going to take my engine, drag it over to my audio source where it turns blue, and now I have a connection between the engine sound and my audio source. Now this audio source plays on awake, which means as soon as my object, my plane, gets instantiated into the scene, gets brought into the scene, you start hearing the sound right away. Let's see how this works. Okay. So it sounds like my plane has an engine. I want to add more audio sources here, right? I want to add audio sources for the thunder sound, for my cloud, and for the island sound, for my island, right? So let's do that. So we'll go Add Component, so another audio source, right? And I'm going to when I do that, I want to drag and drop my thunder sound onto this audio source, this new one. So I've got the second audio source here. Okay, cool. I'm not changing anything. The only thing I don't want to happen is I don't want it to play on awake. I don't want it to play the thunder sound as soon as I start my instantiate my plane. I want to play the thunder sound only when I collide with the cloud. Okay. One more. Let's add in another audio source. And this time I want to drag and drop my yay sound, yay, every time I collide with my island. Right? So I'm going to try and drag this yay sound over here into my audio clip. And now I'm going to uncheck this play on awake because I don't want that to play when I first instantiate my plane. So now if I've done everything correctly, I should still hear my engine sound, right? But not my other sounds. My other sounds aren't there yet. Okay, cool. I've got a program or in code, I've got to make it so that I can access these audio sources. It's not just one audio source. I have a group of components that I'm going to access now, right? There's multiple components I got to add in, and I got to make a reference to them in my code. So how do I do that? Well, in my player collider, which is right here, right, I got to make a reference to the audio sources. So I want to make these things private variables. So I'm going to add them in here. So I'll say private instance variables. So I don't need them to be shown on the screen at all, on the inspector. And I'm going to add in a private audio source. Take a look. Audio source is a keyword, right? It's a type, but I want to make it an array of audio sources, which I'm going to call my audio sources underscore because it's a private variable. That's my convention for private variables. Audio sources. Okay? That's what my array is going to be called. It's an array. This is an array of audio sources. That's what it is. Right? Because I have 3 audio sources, right? 3 audio sources. If I go back to my player, I have 1, 2, 3 audio sources. So I want to read all of those in as an array of audio sources. Let's see how this is done. So that's number 1. I also want to make a reference to each audio source by itself. So I want to say private audio source. Start typing audio source. And I want to have 2 of them, right? They're both private variables. One of them is going to be the cloud audio source. And the other one is the island audio source. I'm naming them this way so you know that these underscores mean they're private, right? But these things are of type audio source, so they can receive a reference to the audio source that's part of in my component list, right? Okay, now in start, I want to, at the beginning when I instantiate my player, I want to get a reference to these audio sources, right? On when I start off, so I say this dot underscore audio sources then, which is a reference to the array, right, is equal to, right, this dot get components, not get component, get components for the very first time, multiple components, right, and I want to look at audio source. And so all my audio source components. That's what this is saying. Get a reference to all my audio source components and assign this reference to them as an array of audio sources. So I've got an array. Now, it's an array. And all arrays in C# are 0-based counting, which means when I go back to my player, this is element 0, this is element 1, and this is element 2, because this is how they're ordered in my list, right? So that means if I want to make a reference to my cloud, which is the thunder sound, my cloud audio source, the thunder sound, I got to use array element or index 1. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go back to code. And now I got to do that. So I'm going to say something like this. This dot underscore cloud audio source is equal to this dot underscore audio sources with an index of 1, right? Reference cloud or thunder sound. Right, that's the first sound. But I do the same thing. This dot underscore island audio source is equal to this dot underscore audio source says 2, right? Which is a reference to the yay sound. That's the order. The only reason why it's like this is because that's the order that I've stacked them in Unity in the inspector, right? This is 0, this is 1, this is 2. That's how I've stacked them. I could have stacked them differently, and then the numbers would be different, right? But that's how I stacked them. So it's going to read from the component list 1 element at a time and create an array. That's what it's going to do. Let's go back. So now I've got these references to these audio sources, right? A good thing to check if right now before I do anything else is check my console to see if I've got any errors. Well, I've got a couple of warnings. It says, look, warning, you've created a variable called cloud audio source, but you didn't use it yet. Well, that's okay. Warnings are good, like that. Okay, well, I don't need this debug.log. I'm going to say if I collide with my island, then I want to play my island sound. So how do I do that? This underscore island audio source dot play. And I'll do the same thing for the cloud, right? So this dot underscore dot cloud audio source dot play. Those are both. So play the yay sound, right? And this just play the under sound. Right? If I collide. Okay, let's see what happens if I make this work now. This is in real time. Let's go. Alright.
Yay.
Why is it colliding twice? Look.
Yay.
This is okay. But what about this one? I collided twice with this eye. Look, my cloud. How come? Any ideas? Why is it colliding twice? Let's show this again. Watch. Bum. And then I'll pause it. Go back to my game. Right, and I'll step through it. Okay, so there's no collision there, right? Oh. So I should hear the sound right now as a collision. Right? And now, right, when I collide, I hear two collisions from my cloud. That's wrong. Why do you think that's happening? There's a reason. I'm crossing the boundary twice because I'm using an edge collider, not a polygon collider. I want you to hear what it would do. An edge collider has the bottom edge plus the top edge. That's all I've done. So what's happening is as the plane crosses the bottom edge, it makes a colliding sound. And then it crosses the top edge again, makes a sound again, right? Because I've got the edge that goes around. It's not a polygon. It's just an edge. Why would I want to use edge colliders if that's the case? Well, an edge collider, you can use multiple colliders for a single object. I don't have to use one collider component. I can have multiple ones, especially in the platformer game that I'm going to get you guys to make. Maybe you want to make a collider that's only for the head. So if someone lands in the person's head, there's a collision. A different collision than if he gets hit from the side, right? As an example, right? So, or underneath, if he lands on something else. If his feet collide with somebody else's head, different collisions, right? He's not going to get hurt if he lands on someone else's head. But if someone else lands on his head, he's going to get hurt, right? That kind of idea. So you can have multiple edge colliders. You can have multiple any colliders, whatever you want. But the reason why we use edge colliders is for that. So we have to modify our collider for our cloud in order for us to fix this. Because our cloud collider is wrong. We used an edge collider that we stretched all the way around to make the cloud. The better collider, of course, would be the Polygon Collider, so we have to do that again. But now we have a problem. My Polygon Collider, my Cloud Collider is already here, and I can't reform my Polygon Collider here with seeing it. So I got to drag my Cloud Collider onto my hierarchy for a moment, and then focus in on it in the scene. Here it is. And I can see my edge colliders. What happens is the plane comes from here, collides once, makes the sound. Then as it leaves the collider, it collides again, right? We don't want that to happen. So we're going to get rid of this collider. Let's do that. So we're going to go edge collider, bye-bye. Right? Remove. And now I'm going to add a component, right? Physics 2D, and I'm going to add in a Polygon Collider, right? And if you notice, my Polygon Collider is very complex. Take a look. Much more complex, right? And that's why I was trying to avoid it. And there's other ways you can modify this. But this is probably the best you're going to get, this Polygon Collider right now, which is very close to my cloud. Take a look, right? Okay, in order for me to affect my cloud, my prefab, I need to apply my changes. If I don't apply my changes, it only refers to this instance of the cloud object, right? So I need to apply. So click apply. And now that I've done that, I got to make sure it's is trigger is on, right? I also got to apply that change, right? And now that I've done that, I can delete my cloud, this temporary cloud. Okay, now let's see what happens when I do that. Let's press play now. See?
Yay.
Two clouds.
Yay.
And I can easily
Yay.
try
Yay.
and avoid the clouds.
Yay.
See? I'm colliding with my object.
Yay.
I would be dead by now.
Yay. Yay.
Make sense? So it took care of some of that issue. And the reason why is because now I'm using a Polygon Collider, right? I don't have to. I don't get hit multiple times. I only get hit once. Let's try that again one more time to make sure that it worked. So, see, it went to one, only one. But if I go to two, there's three though. Right? One, two. That's okay because I went through multiple clouds, right? One cloud, one collision noise. That's how it should be. So we've got our basic collisions, right? That's how things have worked. We've got, let's recap. We've got our collisions, right? We've got our sounds, basic sounds going on. Next day when we get together, so that's tomorrow, I'm going to do a couple things. By the way, FYI, one of these days, tomorrow, next week, I'm going to do a little quiz with you guys in class, right? And when I do a quiz, it's going to be like, it's going to be worth 5% of your mark, right? It's going to detail the stuff we've already covered in weeks 1 to 3, right? So we covered 3D space. Like one of the questions you might have on your quiz might be something like this. What are the 3 main components of all 3-dimensional polygons in 3D space? 3 components that all polygons have. Edges, faces, and vertices. Those are the 3, right? So if I've talked to you guys about this thing a bunch of times, right? So you can fully expect that question or something like it is going to be on the test. And I'm going to put on like almost like a midterm, like kind of a middle. So it'll be this either tomorrow, I might put it up tomorrow, or I might put it on next day, which is going to be our next week, which is next Monday or Tuesday. I'll let you know. If it's going to happen tomorrow, I'm going to send you a little quick note tonight, and it's going to let you know tomorrow morning that there's going to be a bit of a quiz, right? The quiz is going to be like probably not more than 10 or 15 questions, right? Something like that. Not a lot of stuff going on. And we're not going to make it so it's the whole session. It's going to be part of our session, and then the rest will be teaching again, right? So it's not going to be the whole, 2 hours that we're together, right? You'll have a limited time to finish your quiz. All right, so we've covered that. And like I said, we've got most components. Next day, and let's take a look at what we're building, right? Again, I did this in a slightly different order. I'm going to save this, first of all. I'm going to save my scene. I'm going to save my project. And I'm going to close Unity for a second, right? Because we're going to continue this next day. I'm going to close this off. I'm going to upload my changes to GitHub. So I'm going to say git add dot git commit -m, and I'll say added player collider script. And git push origin master. So you have all my changes up on GitHub. All right, so you have all the changes that you're up to date with everybody else. But let's take a look at the, if I was going to launch Unity one more time, let's launch Unity here. And I want to take a look at my completed version of something I want to kind of get to with you guys. Where am I at? What do we still need to do to get to where I'm at, right? Well, here's my other build that I made, right? I'll launch my scenes. And if you notice, I have lives and my score, right? And when I play the game, there's a couple of things that are different. I've changed up my graphics a little bit, right? I have a bit of a coin going on, right? And I have lives and a score, right? I'm going to die soon. But the idea is the same, right? And I died. I'm a -2, right? So we still got to get the score done. Now, the reason why it's not showing up is because I've got no space for my little scene here. It's 514 by 386. But at the end of the day, what we're going to see is our score is going to appear on our in our game, right? So how do we do a scoreboard? Well, if you notice here, next day, what we're going to do is we're going to create a scoreboard, right? Which is an empty component, right? Which is going to have a scoreboard script. That's what it's going to have, right? And inside there, we're going to add a couple of objects, lives and our score object, right? These are UI components, right? So there's a score UI and a lives UI, and we're going to make a scoreboard that keeps track of our score, right? Now you're almost there. You're almost there. You're almost everything you need to get this done by tomorrow, right? So we get together. Like I said, we're going to talk about how to do the scoring, but we're almost there. If you think about it, once you have collisions, scoring isn't that much more difficult to do because you can add a score every time you get hit by a cloud. You subtract a life. Every time you run over an island, you add points because the island's going to give you points. Any questions around this stuff? It's pretty straightforward. Again, if you follow along and if you do your tutorials, and again, the tutorial that I'm giving you for next day, just to reiterate, right, up online, right, if I go to Unity Learn, right, the one I want you to know for next week is if I go to tutorials, under mini projects, right, is this one, creating a basic platformer game. Number 2, under mini projects. Okay, I want you to do this tutorial by next week. Okay, this is fairly recent too. Look, it's made the 24th of July, 2015, so fairly recently. Like this came into being. Now, if you notice, it says check with version 4.6, right? We're going to be doing it for version 5, so there's going to be a few changes from this, right? When we come together. Okay, and that's it for me for today. We're going to get together next day. Remember, be prepared. Next day or week after, we're going to do a bit of a quiz, a pop quiz that's going to come in. It's going to be worth 5% of your final mark because I'm going to try and take away some percentage from your midterm test because it's big, right? Midterms are always huge, and I don't want you to have a huge test for midterm, too much. I want to reduce it a little bit. One more thing, from your midterm, remember that there's going to be 2 components to your midterm. One component is going to be a bit of a test again, some multiple choice questions, also some code examples that you have to understand what they do. And the other part is going to be a practical, right? Like you guys getting together and then talking about like actually putting together a little game in class, same day. So if you're really not good at doing this stuff, if you're not good at working by yourself, right? And if you haven't practiced enough, it's going to really nail you, right? So I need you to practice. That's why we do these assignments, to prepare you for your midterm so that you're good, you're fast enough, you're good enough with your tools to get it all done. Okay? And that's really it for me. We'll see you next day. Should be tomorrow.